All right.
There we go.
There we are. Everybody.
Told me not to forget I'm a moderator. Oops, sorry.
There we are.
Told you I got the sound working.
Everybody.
Told me not to.
Okay then. You are moderator. Hey Aaron, how you doing?
I don't know why it decided to remind me. Maybe it thought I forgot.
Well, it doesn't know about these things. It just does them automatically. Grumpy Owl says hello. Hi, Grumpy Owl.
Hello, everybody.
As usual, we're always having some kind of fun here. And we're ready when you are. How is everybody doing?
Good on our end. We're just waiting for our trip to come up.
Yeah.
Found more repairs on the vehicle I need to do, but the ones I found are minor so far. Beautiful day over here on the coast.
Yes, we're not in the heat wave or the rain.
Just nice, comfortable.
Donna says, hi guys, how are you? I thought you might be on holiday at the power spot this week. No, that's August 20th
Yeah.
to 30th. Apparently my granddaughter also thought we were going to be gone for 10 days and was very confused when she saw my phone was in Northern California, and for some reason Ian's phone, his app didn't work and said he was here. And she was quite discombobulated by the technology not working correctly.
But I don't know why.
I know. I mean,
I could think of a few instances where it just acts properly.
I know.
Well, you know.
And she could see that we were gone. Well,
mostly TVs and things. Computers, they need to get some of the bugs out of the software.
So Julia says, smiles as she approaches and answers, I am fine as a fiddle. How about you all? Sundrop says, hi Siofra and Ian, I'm wonderful. Good. Always good to hear. Grumpy Owl says, pretty good. I'm about to start on a couple resin coasters. Cool. We have a friend that's doing a lot of resin stuff and selling them at the mall. She's having fun making all kinds of figurines and things. Joy says, hello. What are your temps now? Oh, probably what, in the mid to
right
upper
around,
60s or
probably
lower
right around
70?
70 by now. It'll warm up a few more degrees.
Yeah. We get the offshore breeze and stuff like that. I understand it's going to be warmer up in the Portland area and so forth and inland and whatnot. But apparently there is a cooler air mass on its way for our area. And when we went down to visit Ian's friend in Northern California, there's the largest fire in Oregon started not that far from where we were. We were plenty far enough away and not in any danger, but it's creating a smoke
cloud.
Yeah, smoke cloud, air hazard farther east. So, yeah, that's the way it is this time of year. Lul says hello. Sundrop says, I think it's getting ready to storm here. Should be relaxing. You know, it's always good to enjoy the storms when they come. Yeah, so we're looking forward to the trip. This shorter trip gave us an opportunity to see what needed to still be fixed with the van. So when we go longer, we won't have that.
Yeah, when you have a vehicle that old, it's hard to keep all the stuff fixed up all the time.
Yep. But it looks like it's working pretty well. So that's good. We feel more confident since we're going to be going to a place with no service whatsoever.
I'm pretty sure we're good engine-wise anyway, at least.
Yeah.
For the moment.
So what have you all been up to this week, and what would you all like to talk about? So it's good to get a conversation going. We look forward to our Sundays with you guys.
Sure.
They're all thinking at the same time, and they'll all come through at once. Okay, I guess we'll have to talk about something anyway. Until they all decide to throw questions at us.
So, pick something then.
Aaron says, trying to stay cool. It's been very hot here. Yeah, I mean, the heat wave is pretty extreme around the entire planet and in the ocean. Right now, there's a lot of people who are suffering with it. And not just people, but all life, both marine and land. It's pretty crazy. We're glad we are where we are, so we feel lucky to be in a place where we don't experience the extremes at the moment, at least. Who knows? Sundrop says, well, I'm waiting on the storm. It's thundering right now. Okay, so you could lose power potentially, and if you suddenly disappear, then we'll know what happened. We don't get very many thunderstorms around here. We just get a few here and there, and some of them are, when we get them, we're usually pretty excited about it. When I lived in Rhode Island as a kid, we had more thunderstorms. My father always liked them, so we would watch them. Got to go through a few hurricanes that way, too, which was also interesting. Weather is always an interesting thing. Leo says, bought amethyst lights, small crystals with light on a wire, and my son made a star out of the lights for my wall. Beautiful. Awesome. I love crafts.
Anybody got any good money spells?
We could all use one of those.
Well, I've tried a bunch of them, but they haven't ever worked quite as described.
Yeah, well.
I had one called the gambler's nutmeg, where you drill a hole in the nutmeg and you fill it with mercury and then you seal it off with some wax, and that helped me win free games at pinball, but I couldn't decide that it had done anything else. It didn't help me win the lottery.
Julia says, it was supposed to storm here tonight and I was dreading the drive to pick up my son. Now it seems to have petered out. Chuckles. Sundrop says, if we lose power, I'll go in the family room with my family and sit quietly. I have had so many close encounters with lightning, it's just ridiculous. So I'm careful when we have actual lightning around, because apparently I attract it. I don't know why. My theory is that Thor likes me and he's just saying hello. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's funny anyway. It amuses me to say so. And someone was wanting to understand why the Fae were always so mean and caused chaos, and I'm like, what? I was kind of confused by the question, because I see them just as a source of, part of nature, and nature is extremely chaotic and potentially violent, and just sort of how life is. So I don't know. I said, have you ever watched a nature program? Florida Girl says, I need a good road opener. It's hot and humid here in Florida.
Yeah, I've been working with Ganesha lately to try to open pathways and things. I know that if you're into Santeria, Eliwa is the one who does that, or Papa Legba, but I'm not so much oriented towards those religions. So Ganesha fits the bill pretty well.
Yeah, Ganesha is a good removing blockages to progress.
One could go with the Mercury, the old Mercury thing, like a Mercury talisman or something.
It is very hot and humid in Florida, and the ocean is like over in the 90s. I'm like astonished. Sundrop says, or she'll drift off to sleep if she loses power. Lulu says, Garden is doing fantastic. A person from 20 years ago appeared in my life. Interesting to catch up. Life is pretty normal. Yeah, it can be interesting to catch up with people. Mary says, hey y'all. Hi Mary. Julia says, I can always smell when it's going to have lightning and a storm. I'd stand in the doorway and sniff the air until my mother would come and scold me and get me to go back inside. Well, yeah, there is a very specific smell to the ozone and the electrical energy that it creates. when I was in Texas and we were looking for a place to do the ritual that I used to open up the portals between the worlds on that property, we went out and a thunderstorm came up while we were walking, and the people there were showing us some of the things that used to happen on the property and so forth. And we're getting close to this tree, and all of a sudden my hair started tingling and I started to feel the lightning, and I made everybody turn around and walk back to the house singing so that people didn't panic. And we got into the house, and one of the people that lived in the house went to the kitchen sink to wash his hands, and he turned on the faucet, and that's when lightning hit, and it actually went through the water line and came out the faucet, fortunately missing him, but he was he was pretty startled by that. And I was like, yeah, I told you lightning was going to hit, and it hit the tree we were standing under when I felt it. So it is, when you're tuning into environmental factors, they definitely can do that. Joy says, I love storms. I think they're exciting. Sundrup says, yeah, I love storms too. They are definitely exciting. No doubt about it. Charlotte G says, hi, Siofra and Ian. I've been wanting to ask if you have ever encountered something in nature, like a tree in my recent experience, that you feel has a negative energy attached.
Not I. The only things I've ran across with negative energy attached has been left there by people in my particular case.
I have come across places where something really negative has happened that has affected the plant life around it. There was a place, one of the early settler houses or whatever in our area. There was a bad thing that happened underneath a tree that this house ended up being built upon, and someone was assaulted and murdered right there, and she, in her dying breath, cursed the land. So there was definitely that kind of an energy right there.
Of course, it was still brought about by people.
It was.
But I haven't ran it.
But an attachment, a negative attachment.
Right.
There are some spirits out there that are so energetically intense and inhuman that sometimes people will translate that as a negative thing, when in fact it's just like something very powerful and old and non-human. So there's always that as well. But yeah, there are times when things can happen, and the life form nearby will absorb the energy of the event. And like Ian says, mostly they're caused by people. Florida Girl says, thank you. Mary says, it's unbearable here in the Southwest. Yes, I can imagine. 23 days now of 110 plus temperatures in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm hoping they never break this record, because this is insane. Florida Girl says, I love a good storm. Tracy says, hello. I just came across your videos and I find them so interesting. What are your thoughts on Ouija boards, and have you had any experiences with them? Yes, I used Ouija boards when I was younger. We had a Ouija board that scared us, because that's what Ouija boards do when you're first trying them out, it seems. We had this whole thing happening. We were asking it questions, and all of a sudden our little dog started barking at the stove, and we all got freaked out and asked the Ouija board what was happening, and the Ouija board says, death has entered the room. So that was pretty dramatic for us. But yeah, I used Ouija boards to communicate for a while with Moida. Sometimes that's how that got started. A lot of channelers actually begin with Ouija boards, because it gives you something to focus on and allows things to come through. Done experiments with them and so forth. I don't really use mine anymore at this point, because I get too much direct information and it slows down the process for me. Instead of having to sit there and wait for the letters to come and having someone write out the letters.
They're not intrinsically bad or anything, though.
No.
It all depends on if you probably the worst thing you could do is let them scare you. If I think that most bad experiences people have with Ouija boards come because of their own thought forms and things they build up themselves.
Their own unconscious comes out to play. Yeah.
Yeah, they get so concerned about it, and it weighs so intensely on their mind that they end up bringing up thought forms which tend to make those things reality, but intrinsically a Ouija board is just a piece of cardboard.
Well, yeah, I mean, can you imagine? You know, I've imagined when people say there's a spirit in it, it comes with a spirit already attached, and I'm like, really? How does that happen? I visualize the factory floor where they're making these things, and there must be like a cater of magicians at the exit before they leave and doing these chanting and evocations and invocations and things like that to like put spirits and trap them in these boards as they leave. I think they'd be more expensive if that was the case.
Yeah, honestly, I think the worst effect they have usually is scaring the people so that then the people bring, it's really easy for thought forms to materialize if you're very intense and genuine about them, genuinely concerned, and fear and all that can take a shape and form and then haunt you and pester you, and really have very little to do with the Ouija board, except that it gets the whole process started. So I think probably the worst thing people can do is be afraid of them, really. You should be careful what you're doing, as always, with anything in magic. But
that's why shadow work and working on yourself is so important. You minimize that particular risk with your unconscious coming out.
Ouija board is just a tool, and if something genuinely comes through the Ouija board, it's at least partially through your own abilities and clairvoyance. Things don't just happen on their own generally, so it's less of a concern than a lot of people have made it out to be, in my opinion.
Well, the expounded cases of demon possession and things flying around the room make it look like it's extremely scary, but I don't even know if any of those are valid cases, but even so, the subconscious of the human mind is pretty powerful to begin with, and the anxieties and fears that people have expressing themselves through that, which is why the personal work is important, to be clear inside of yourself.
You also find that nobody who doesn't believe in a Ouija board, anyone who doesn't believe that stuff works at all, will never have a bad experience for one, because it depends so much on your own belief system and such.
So Florida Girl says, I'm on the Gulf side as well. Oh yeah, nice, more heat. Sundrop says, Tracy Jackson, please be very careful with Ouija boards. Tracy says, yes, I will. Thank you, Sundrop. Sundrop says, I saw a man using a Ouija board during a ritual. Very interesting, though. Yeah, the only time we've actually had them during a ritual has been on Samhain for divination kind of stuff. And it's just mostly as a lark. Not everybody's into them. And that's perfectly okay. So Julia says, when I lived in Arizona, I was in Mesa, and several years we had summers where the temperature got up to 116 degrees Fahrenheit for days on end and no rain. Long drought when I was there. Never going back. Nope. Yeah, that is a lot. Sundrup says, didn't see anything happen on camera with the board and ritual. He was scaring me because of his trance state and all those candles burning. Wow. If you don't close the board out properly, will you have bad experiences? Well, that depends on your belief system. There's nothing wrong with putting around a circle of protection and so forth to clarify what you're doing, to be focused and concentrate on the process. And if you do that, then you want to open it when you're done. But when I was younger and we were using the Ouija boards, we never did anything like that. We just hauled off the thing, sat on our lap, and started playing with it. So, again, personal beliefs really have an impact on what happens after. Tracy says, thank you for your knowledge and advice. You're welcome. Julia says, agrees about the Ouija board being a tool. If really concerned, put up a circle to protect. Use specifics about what is and is acceptable, and if not, adhered to closed session.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice always.
I've had a few times where I've started using one with other people, and it's just started spewing out, vulgarities non-stop, and I'm like, okay, that's it, we're done.
You're using it with other people, and their clairvoyance or whatever's going on with them also affect it when you've got multiple people there. So
yep,
you're also dealing with their thought forms and things if you put yourself in a group.
And I can use one by myself without anyone else there as a tool. I have in the past. But I have met some people that get so dependent on it to make decisions I ran into a couple once that wouldn't go shopping to the grocery store without checking with their Ouija board first to make sure that it was okay. And I think that's going really excessive, giving your power away to some who knows what the heck, you know? It doesn't make sense to me. So whenever you're doing divination of any type, you have to keep in mind that you are part of the tool, whatever tool you're using.
Actually sounds like a good topic for a video on its own, you know.
What,
How
talking
not,
about Ouija boards?
well, not just that, but how not to go awry on spells and things by your own thought forms and things, and how to keep those down and, you know, manifest what you want, not what you fear type of thing. You know, because those fears can come up and get stuck in there, and they can cause all kinds of, not that you shouldn't fear anything.
Julia slaps palm to forehead at the grocery store Ouija board. Yes. Yes. And, you know, it is. I once went to, I think, a Halloween party. I've done this a couple of times, but this was a specific one. I often dress as a fortune teller, I guess, with a crystal ball and so forth. And I went to this one door, and I had my crystal ball with me, and this woman answers the door. She says, "Oh," she says, "what do you see in my future?" And I looked, and I saw her future, and it was like not good. And I'm like, "Oh no! Now what do I do?" I said, "You're going to have a very interesting time of it." Yeah. Ah.
Just say cookies if somebody asks you that.
Cookies are in your future, yes. Sundrop says, what about the figure 8 motion on the Ouija board? Well, that just means it's waiting to decide which way it's going to go, or there's battling subconscious minds that are using the planchette, and no one has taken control of the planchette enough for it to go in one direction or another. Or, you know, people are doubting that it works. So, Jono says, I wonder if Ouija actually is riskier because of mass hysteria about portals to hell and stuff. I've been thinking it's the same as any divination tool like pendulum. Maybe Hollywood changed that.
Well, I think that's a good observation, and I think you're right. You know, all that Hollywood stuff just makes things worse. You think about the real movies with, like, you know, like the ones I've had 7 and 8 iterations. It was a horror movie about Jason, basically, you know, that kind of thing. Those things get built up as their own thought form as a nasty being, and then they can go and... I've never investigated what such nasty thought forms do, but I assume they do what they do in real life. They probably go in and pester people in their dreams and things.
Well, and the thing is, depending on the age when you're using it, your hormones can have a huge effect. Because when you're going through a transition, that kind of a physical transition, there's a lot of chaotic energy, and we know that poltergeist phenomenon is generally associated with a teenager going through puberty. And so when you're in that age group and you're using it, then you're much more likely to have things sort of go awry because of all those, you know, emotions and things like that aren't being processed correctly, and it can come out in strange ways.
And still speaking on Jono's question, though, I think it can, you know, I think those things very well can influence things. And so, yeah, the proliferation of negative thought forms, I think, has made it more dangerous to people who are, especially people who are sensitive to being
influenced
or obsessed with things like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different kinds of personality types out there, so we can only speak from,
but you know,
generalities.
If you think like that, you attract that kind of thought form to you.
Fear is a great feeder of all kinds of things.
Yep.
Mostly not good.
Yep.
The things that feed off fear are, generally speaking, become out of control negative kinds of experiences. And there are a number of cases of people who don't believe in the supernatural at all, and don't believe in a ghost, that move into a haunted house and all hell breaks loose. And they are like the most confused group of people out there, because now they have to face the fact that they were wrong, that there is such a thing. And depending on their religious upbringing or their spiritual persuasion or what they think is going on, how they define it. I've met people that have made the mistake of really engaging too much in it and it becomes a negative experience for them because it feeds off the attention and the fear and the anxiety and stuff that's promoted by Hollywood and movies and
Basically,
fears and anxieties that they have.
get yourself under control, build up your aura a little bit through some magical exercises and meditations, and then, you won't have those things to fear because most of them are self-caused, not intentionally, obviously, unintentionally.
So Sundrop says, I think TV has exaggerated the Ouija board, and so am I less likely to experience paranormal poltergeist? No, you are not. I don't know. You are a younger individual, so you may be more likely, but if you are balanced,
Not because of a Ouija board in
right?
particular.
If you are balanced, if you're dealing with any angst that comes up or confusion and stuff like that, going into therapy is useful. Those cases, the poltergeist cases, stop as soon as the person who's the source of all that energy gets clear. So that's the cure for any of that stuff.
And I'd also recommend, if you're worried about any of that, do a circle and do a banishing, but make sure you use that to clear yourself too. When you do that, clear all negative thought forms and things out of you, and go into it with a clear, unbiased perception, and you're a lot less likely to have problems.
Sundrop says, I'm 48 tomorrow. Okay, I thought you were a teenager from a previous conversation. My bad. So you would be less likely then, if you are going to be turning 48 tomorrow. Julia says, oh, happy birthday, Sundrop. Jono says, even though I understand it better now because of kids' games from childhood, it freaks me out to do mirror staring for divination. Thinking it's contacting evil isn't a good mindset to try it in.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, and then seeing your face suddenly morph, disappear, turn into something completely different is unsettling.
I'm not sure everybody can do that, but mine certainly does when I do that.
Sundrop says thank you. Ruth says, hi all. Hi, Ruth. Yeah, it's the idea of that's planted. We like, our primitive brain doesn't like things to change that we can't understand. It sees it as a danger, as something bad, and fear is one of the responses that we have in order to get us out of a dangerous situation. So it's not a bad thing, it's not an uncommon thing to do something like that and have an anxiety or fear response.
Just some instances it's counterproductive.
Well, you can work with it and you can get through that phase and get to the other side of it where it's not bothering you. And then you can use it more effectively if you decide that's what you want to do. Certainly there are plenty of other forms of divination. And I know when I was channeling, people who were in the circle with me would see my face changing a lot when they would look at me. So I was morphing in person, apparently. Of course, at that point I couldn't see it because I was on the inside of it and it was inside me coming out.
But if a person has the wherewithal to just put their perception back to normal, then that goes away. I mean, you can
well, having control.
Yes.
Yes. You can snap yourself out of it. You can discover that you have control over that. You can let yourself experience it just up to a certain point when it starts to cause a little bit of anxiety, and then stop and then slowly work forward from there. But that's how I can see spirits that have very strange looking aspects and not freak out. I mean, it is something I had to let myself learn how to do, to be able to look not at what the shape and the aspect I'm seeing means to people, but to see it just as it is without trying to put it into a category that I would then necessarily be afraid of. So that lets me have a more direct communication with a being and learn more information that way. So yeah, it's like last week I said something about the bath I took and seeing some stuff, and I was thinking about it, and it was definitely a very pan-looking being that came through, which I hadn't seen in a while, so that was sort of interesting. I like the fact that they warned me they're coming, though, with smells. And I think I get more information from him with smells than I do even with anything else, because pleasant smells tell me that they have some pleasant energetic influence. That's how I'm interpreting it. And so that helps to calm me down if they smell nice. And with the fairies, I often end up smelling them long before I hear them or see them. And I smell that smell of mint. So Sundrop said, thank you. I had to move back in my parents. She knows I'm into witchcraft, but still can't practice like I want. Aha.
Yeah, if you're staying in somebody else's houses, it's always their rules, and
that's the way that works.
Yep.
Tracy says, when did you first realize that you have this gift? Oh, I don't know. I think I was 4. It's sort of been with me my entire life, so I'm not sure if I actually realized I had a gift. I realized I scared people, and people didn't see what I saw, and I think it wasn't, it took a longer time for me to see it not as a liability, but as an asset. And I still sometimes freak people out. When we went to Ian's friend's house, the first thing that happened was I sensed and then saw his wife that he lost just last year was there, and I could feel her presence. And I went and asked him, I said, are you feeling her presence? And he was like, I asked her to send me a sign, and here you are. So I'm not always confident that it's a good idea for me to share this information with people when it happens, but I'm at this point, I think, more likely to than not. Otherwise, what's the point of me experiencing it? It was pretty clear she wanted me to tell him something. So, yeah, it's interesting. Sundrop says, I share things from time to time. She says she doesn't believe in witchcraft. Still can't burn anything, so I do what I'm allowed.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Julia says, fear has great uses for our survival and should be appreciated for what it should do. But always ask yourself if the fear is helping or hindering you, and is it really good for survival? Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the different responses, are run, flight, fight, or freeze are the typical responses that we have to something unknown and potentially dangerous. And sometimes none of those are good. You need to have a fourth option. Interact? I don't know. But yeah, so it's interesting. I was thinking about that kind of stuff, though, because it is a slow process. I think the first time that when I was up north and I was meditating underneath this tree that became my first wand, and I was looking into the other tree across from me, and I suddenly saw a pan as clear as a bell. It freaked me out. I was like, ah! What the heck is that? And then, of course, it was gone. So learning how to allow yourself to not react and sit with it helps you gain more experience and more information. And now it doesn't bother me. I was fine with this pan figure in my bathroom with me in the bathtub. So, yeah. I think experience definitely helps.
Yeah.
And I agree with Julia, because fear is a help if you're needing to run because there's some dangerous animal, either a beast or a human. Now, that's going to be finding you in a place that's not tenable, or, not. The fact that I know that they can't hurt me helps the fear response, I think, for me, because I know that without my permission, there's nothing they can do. And since I have pretty good boundaries at this point, and they don't have permission to do anything without my acknowledgement, then it sort of gives me a sense of control, maybe? I don't know. Sundrop says, my mom does like my witch's pillow. She said it was cute. Oh, I love those things. I made 3 different kinds of dream pillows. I made one for sleep, one, for like a rest easy kind of sleep, one for chasing away nightmares, and one for a love pillow to bring, love, sense, feelings, and self-love and whatnot.
They're pretty amazing for how long they kept their scent, though.
And they still have a nice scent. Yeah. And I did a huge amount of research before I made them. I went and I looked at all these different plants and attributes and stuff, and I did a cross-cultural kind of thing where before I decided what plants to use for the purpose, and I wanted plants that were very, that were like most cultures saw them the same way, and they had them, they had that energetic base to them. So it was interesting to do the research, and that's how I picked the plants that I used for the pillows. So when you say it's a witch's pillow, what exactly do you mean? I mean, is it a specific one, like the dream pillows that I made, or is it for some other purpose, or just because you liked how it looked, or just curious? Tracy says, are you close with your siblings, and do they have the same experiences? I'm close with one sister, and the gift runs through our family. My other sisters also had a lot of experiences as well. She had a haunting that she had to deal with that was a very aggressive haunting that attacked her children and like locked a door she couldn't get into when she was stationed in Germany. And my other sister gets premonitions. She's the one that has the news come on her TV and tell her a breaking news story that hasn't happened yet, which she's finally figured out when that happens that she has to verify the information in order to keep from calling the news station and wanting to know more and then figuring out who she is. My mother had experiences with ghosts when she was younger. And since my grandmother was raised in Ireland by her grandmother at the base of the Hill of Fairy, I suspect that it just runs through our entire family line. My granddaughter has the gift, and my son has the healing gift. I'm not sure if he has premonitions. It's something I should ask him about because I'm curious now. But it seems to be very strong in the women. My brother I have no contact with. He turned into a misogynistic a-hole. And so I see no point in having anything to do with him. He also doesn't approve of who I am, which apparently is a common theme for some people. But hey, I'm not looking for their approval, so that's fine. Jono says, has your paranormal group started up again after COVID? No. After COVID was over, nobody got a hold of us, so we decided it was done, and we were fine with that. I still sometimes will, I would be willing to go on a paranormal investigation, but the last person who contacted me, I was like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. He sounds like he's kind of mentally unstable, to say the least, and I don't know if that would be a good idea.
At some point, you kind of get tired of all that stuff, and then the same way with the group thing, there's no group thing that ever works right. It's kind of like
there's always conflict and politics and personality clashes and
we don't have any of that in our home life, so we don't need to bring it in from external places. Not between us anyway.
Julia says, my Pan statue seems to want to pull a fear response on me at times. Started when I put him high up on a wardrobe to keep away from the cats. Now I get an impression of formless panic, like a joke. Pan and panic. Gee, I wonder, could they be related? Shay says, greetings and blessings all. Hi, Shay.
Hi, Shay.
Sundrop says, the pillow I got at Walmart last Halloween, and it says, us witches gotta stick together, written in cursive. So it's a Halloween decoration pillow. Okay, gotcha. Cute. Yes. And I got some cups from Walmart that have the word witches on them. It's like witch's brew and
they're nice big cups.
They're like soup cups. They're like gigantic, like a bowl.
Just perfect for a big cup of coffee.
It's like a bowl with a handle. And I think I got like a doormat or something for a Halloween decoration that we have out there. That's about opening up your heart, and witches are welcome here is the doormat, and the plaque is enter with an open heart or something like that. And Bobby says, hails Siofra. Hi, Bobby. How you doing? Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm glad that I'm at the point where I can just accept who and what I am and explore it and get better at it. So it's a nice place to be instead of being confused and wondering why nobody sees the things I see. So yeah, not too worried about actually being crazy at this point either. So that's also fun. A relief, as it were. Sundrop says, what are your thoughts on pentagram decor? That would be too obvious. Well, I'm a very obvious witch at this point, so okay, so during Christmas time one year, I was with my mother, she was visiting, and we're driving around looking at Christmas decorations, and I'm yelling, look, there must be a witch who lives there, there's a 5-pointed star. It's just pulling her chain. She's like, oh, stop that. So, sometimes if it's an obvious pentagram, with the way we draw it, not just a star, then some people might think. But this was weird. So I was at the pool, our local pool, going swimming. There was a woman in there who had the triple goddess tattoo with the moon and the crescents, and inside the moon was a pentagram. And, I said, so, are you a pagan? She says, no, I'm into shamanism. I'm like, what? And I'm like, that is a part of paganism. And paganism is a large umbrella that covers a lot of things. And I was like, okay. So we never really talked after that. But I thought, why are you wearing such an obvious, witch symbol? Or, it's more associated with witches than it is just with paganism. But I have pentagrams all over the place. I have them in my yard. I have them everywhere. And I understand that a lot of witches have a purple door, which used to be how they found each other. And I thought that was interesting. That was sort of the way you decorate your yard can tell other witches who you are. And some of them are subtle, using globes or bells or fishnet, and that kind of thing. So it just really depends on how you feel and whether you are okay with being obvious. But things happen to people where it's not obvious. We had a local person here who had a license plate that was ELF 666. And that was just her license plate. And her neighbors got together and talked about the fact that she was obviously a witch and a Satanist. And then they went to confront her at her house, the whole group together, to confront her about this, and she was pretty surprised because she's not. It's like, what? So Bobby says, which DNA is reality? Well, could be. Julia says, I don't think that he likes being up there, to be honest, but that should change soon, so who knows. I've got a pentagram on my arm along with all those runes I spoke of before. Very obvious. Yeah. Bobby says, which witch is which? Ha ha. Sundrop says, people see a pentagram and think Satanism. I don't want to scare people. Or is that just on them? Well, it's going to depend on where you live and what can happen to you. Because it can be dangerous to come out as a witch when people think that you're a Satanist. I mean, the satanic panic thing that happened here in the 80s ruined a bunch of different people's lives. Where
it's ironic, though, since Christmas stars are
universal.
Yeah.
And the thing is okay, so traditionally in Wicca, the upright pentagram was the first degree, and the third degree was the inverted pentagram. And because of this whole Hollywood Satanism kind of thing, they've taken that away. They don't use that anymore. Wiccans don't use the inverted pentagram because they don't want to have to explain it to people. And how, it's like if you just think about it, if the upright pentagram represents the human being connected with the elements, the inverted pentagram is manifesting all that down in a direct point into reality. So, it's not necessarily negative, but people have their associations,
yeah,
so be careful.
People end up using it that way, right?
Right. Lulu says, well, I want to put a wire circle around the star my son made and crochet flowers that I want to attach to the circle, so it will be a pretty pentagram. Ah, it sounds lovely. Cool. I think that sounds great. Julia says, Sundrop, it really is just on them. I am not in favor of completely repressing, expressing of who you are in favor of irrational fears of people who'd force you to be totally out of resources or freedom. Well, yeah, and in an ideal reality, that's the way it should be. But again, practicality speaking, if it wasn't against the law to burn witches in the United States, there'd be a lot of dead witches.
I'm afraid that's true. As much as I wouldn't have liked to believe it in the past, you know, I've seen enough, yeah. Unfortunately.
Jono says, some of the Satanists I've seen on YouTube are some of the nicest people I've heard speak. Well, then they're not Satanists in the sense that the Christians see Satanists, or the original Satanists that got started, which then morphed into different forms like Luciferianism and stuff like that. But I personally am not interested in the pantheon in any way whatsoever, so I don't care what spin they're putting on it. I'm not in that pantheon, so what they do is their business.
Let me put it this way. There's lots of descriptions and things of different types of Satanism and stuff, and I will also admit that just because somebody calls them a Satanist, that doesn't mean they're into bad things. But I will put it forth to you that Satan is an adversary of Christ or God, and that anybody implying that they're Satanists as such, or implying something about this war against the Christian God, you can't be a self-professed Satanist without being a Christian. Because that's what it takes.
Which is why I think they changed it.
Else. Like people who call themselves Luciferians, okay, Lucifer, Morning Star, and all that, I can buy some of that, but in my opinion, if you call yourself a Satanist, that's what you're proclaiming. You're proclaiming you're part of the Christian faith in the sense of being an adversary to Christianity. You know.
At least you're attaching yourself to that whole thought form.
Yes.
If that's not your conscious intent, it's still there as far as the definitions go.
If that's not your approach, you should call yourself something different than a Satanist.
Yeah.
Because that implies that's what a Satanist is.
Yep.
My opinion.
Sundrop says, thank you, Julia. I like witchy decor. Yeah, so do I. Joy says, at Julia, isn't that what Pan does? I think that's where the word panic comes from. Yes.
Yes.
But I would not put him above my eye level. Yeah, I think that's what the joke was about.
And actually, go ahead, read. Sorry.
So Sundrop says, I had a supervisor who told me he was a good male witch.
No, you missed Bobby's.
Oh, sorry. Satan is adversary doesn't mean evil in all cases. Well, yeah, because we just said that.
And that's actually correct.
That's what we were just talking about.
In the Bible, that's actually correct. I believe in some cases the word adversary was actually replaced with Satan, but it's true that is the meaning of Satanist as adversary.
And what they're doing now is they're being an adversary to bigotry and against freedom of religion. That's
still,
the take they're using.
In the past, it didn't necessarily mean anything, but nowadays, really, that's what Satanist means realistically in the common mind.
Well, it's a good way to get people's back up and freak them out, which could be part of what they like.
Yeah.
Julia says, oh yes, Siofra, I'm sure of that. I am getting better and better responses from people, though, in the Deep South here, despite my tats. Well, good, because, freedom of religion is supposed to be a real thing, and apparently some people have forgotten that.
Well, it's supposed to be. That's a legal definition. Freedom of religion in reality is just about every store we've had in Coos Bay that sold magical stuff has had windows broken and stuff with rocks and been
We had a funny,
treated.
I feel funny but not funny incident. We have a local county fair, and one year there was a woman who was a puppeteer, and one of her characters was a fortune teller with a crystal ball. The local newspaper came out with this whole rant about how allowing her to come back and do her show was inviting Satan to enter into our county and opening the door for all this evil to come in. And I was just like, ugh. It's a puppet show, people. It's a character in a puppet show. But that tells you how backward some of the people here are, or how fear response they are about things that they don't understand. Sundrop says, I had a supervisor who told me he was a good male witch. I don't need to be scared of him. This was before I was into witchcraft. Well, good. Julia says, oh yes, Joy, that is basically how I knew I was causing the fear episodes. It was quite irrational. Yes. With the panic. Sundrop says, even though I was taught against witchcraft, I was always drawn to it. Now I'm on my path. Well, I think that's the case for a lot of people. I just always knew I was a witch from the time I was little. It was never a question for me, although I did discover people have various responses to finding out that you're a witch. And there was a lot of men who were weirdly attracted to me because of their perceived closeness to power or something. It was just very strange. I wasn't into it, but yeah, it was odd human behavior. There's a lot of that around.
Yep.
But it's interesting. And we don't use the word warlock anymore, generally speaking, in the larger pagan community, because everybody keeps pointing out that word doesn't mean a male witch. That word means a betrayer of the group.
Oh, is that true? I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the contentions that some people have. So a witch is a witch, male or female, doesn't matter. You're still just a witch. So just throwing that out there. Julia says, takes out the oh yes combo of finger movements from my keyboard after the last 3 posts. Yeah, and this isn't a path for everybody because it requires you to be more thoughtful and be willing to confront yourself. I mean, you cannot really walk this kind of a magical path without a clear eye, a clear view of who you are and where you are on it, and without the ability and willingness to make true choices. If you make a wrong choice, you have to change your course. It's like, it's your responsibility. No one else is telling us what to do, and it's a weird thing. I find it strange that a lot of non-pagans believe that we're just running around being unethical, willy-nilly, doing whatever we want, and have no foundation for morals or behavior or whatever, because without a set of rules, of course, we would do things that they would do, which would be whatever they felt like it. And yet, to me, it's the exact opposite. Being more responsible for what happens to you and to the people around you makes you more cautious and more introspective if you're paying attention. And it is. My granddaughter has had some moments with that concept, and it's like, because I'm a human being and I act like a human being, I don't have to have a religious philosophy or a spiritual foundation in order to know what's right and what's not right. And so yeah. All right, so Tracy says, on one of your other videos, Jono mentioned doing a sour jar or sweet jar. I can't see underneath that.
I think a sour.
There we are, sour jar.
Sour.
Have you ever done one of them? I've helped someone do a sweet jar. I haven't done a sour jar. I was talking to someone online, and I thought the sour jar might work for her. These are, spell work and stuff I do as needed, and I haven't needed one of those. But I had a friend who needed a sweet jar. She was going through a dissolution of a relationship and wanted things to go well. And so we figured out, between the two of us, a way of doing it that would help. And it did. It worked really well. So there was a better resolution at the end of the relationship than there might have been. So I think a sour jar is there to make somebody leave you alone. And Jono can tell me if that's the case. Bobby says, a side of me is pure potent witchcraft energy. I can't get away from it. It is in me. Bobby says, Siofra, do you sometimes do chaos magic? The definition of chaos magic, I don't think I do.
But not for any reason, I don't think, but just because we have other means we use, which is we've
right.
already learned. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we have pathways that are already well developed and evolved. I mean, relationships with different deities and energies and spirit beings and that kind of thing. So chaos magic I read one of the books on chaos magic, and it just didn't sound appealing to me. And so I didn't do it. That doesn't mean it might not work for someone else.
Not a judgment, yeah. You just can't do it all in this lifetime. Yeah.
I also don't go looking for Cthulhu.
Well, yeah. Well, as far as chaos magic, I'm familiar with Austin Spare's stuff way back when the chaos magic was just getting started. But yeah, it's not, doesn't appeal to me too much either.
And Jono gave us a good definition at one point and felt it wouldn't appeal to me, and he was correct. It did not. Lulu says, can you explain chaos magic? Maybe we should let Jono explain chaos magic since he has such a good definition. Because,
Well, I can come up with
Ian's going to look up a definition of chaos magic.
Yeah.
Do you not have Google?
Assuming I can find the right thing here. There we go.
But yeah, I did like I liked the turkey curse, and I thought that would work quite well. And the idea of the turkey curse was basically if someone was bothering you, you spun around, you threw your arms at them and screamed gobble, 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 really loud, and then they would leave you alone. And I think that would work.
So from Wikipedia, chaos magic is a modern tradition of magic emerging in England in the 1970s as part of the wider neo-pagan and esotericist subculture. It drew heavily from the occult beliefs of artist Austin Osman Spare, expressed several decades earlier, and parts of it are related to making your own sigils and talismans and things from your own ideas and doing that yourself instead of using pre-made ones. But I feel that the pre-made ones are easier to use myself because they already have energy forms and things associated with them that you can draw on. Whereas if you're doing chaos magic in the style of Austin Spare, you use your own energy to produce these things. Sometimes you use your own sexual energy through masturbation and things like that. And it's just, it's another form, but personally I don't think it's any more effective than what we do anyway. I don't have a reason for not caring for it, except it just doesn't appeal to me somehow on a personal level.
So can you explain how you do it or what it is more than just when it came about?
Well, it depends. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways you can do things. There were some old things about making sigils by taking aspects of letters and putting the letters together to form one symbol.
Well, they're doing that all over the place now.
And that's part of it, and it's similar to that. Austin Spare would go into a trance sometimes where you draw these things out, but you draw them and you empower them through the sex act. He had a hole that he would masturbate into. He called his ejaculatorium. Excuse the subject if anybody's sensitive, I apologize. And use that to charge up the seals and talismans and things, and he'd usually put some of the result on the seals and things. I don't know much more than that about it because it's not a method I have ever cared to use. But I think the idea behind it is more of making your own seal to have a certain meaning by charging it up for that. So it's all based on standard magical principles. They're just, I don't know for sure why it's even called New Age, except that his work is what brought a lot of it into the public and got people aware.
Well, 1970s is like recent kind of stuff.
And calling it chaos
and it's just about everything,
with him and Crowley, and he was studying Crowley stuff and that. So, yeah, I don't know the details not doing it, but it's on that general nature.
Okay. Sundrop says, my niece told me I can practice more away from home, but I still think I'm limited away from home. She's into Santeria and Hoodoo. She's very advanced. Yeah, this is very different. I mean, there's so many different styles of magic out there. Sundrop says, but unfortunately we aren't that close, my niece. Bobby says, the beauty of chaos magic is that anything is possible from all directions with no interferences from our conscious mind. We let go and it happens.
Yeah, that's the goal, for sure.
Well, I call that being in the moment and manifesting things that I need when I need them, because they just sort of happen. So, but I just call that being in tune with the nature of the universe. And my conscious mind doesn't interfere with me most of the time, so maybe I'm a chaos magician and don't know it.
Oh, basically it's just it's another system, which is fine. Yeah. Genesis P. Origin. The symbol of chaos was lifted from the fantasy novels of Michael Moorcock, who had some interesting books.
There's a lot of stuff people get from
Yeah,
literature.
Preluded by Kenneth Grant, who had studied with both Crowley and Spare and introduced elements of Lovecraft's fictional Cthulhu mythos into his own magical writings. There was a trend for chaos magicians to perform rituals invoking or otherwise dealing with entities from Lovecraft's work, such as the Great Old Ones.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons I'm not interested, because they're mythical people, or they didn't exist. In my memory, at least, from as far back as I can go, that was just a work of fiction. I like working with forces I can connect with. That's why I said without realizing it that I wasn't into Cthulhu.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Alan Chapman, while praising chaos magic for breathing new life into Western occultism, thereby saving it from being lost behind a wall of overly complex symbolism and antiquated morality, has also criticized chaos magic for its lack of initiatory knowledge, teachings that cannot be learned from books and must be transmitted orally or demonstrated, present in all traditional schools of magic.
So Bobby says, my magic is way more stronger if I'm in the middle of wild nature, not in the city with full of Wi-Fi signals.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
That's why we're looking forward to going to the power spot and just sitting on it. Yep. And we have we on our way back from Northern California, we stopped and picked up some matched amethyst crystals. So we're linking. We each have two, and we're linking the crystals together to each other. And then we're going to leave one on the power spot and bring one back with us so that we can connect to that energy, even though we're not there. So it should be interesting. I like doing that kind of stuff. Julia says, just like most things, if it yanks your chain, then it will likely work, and if it doesn't, then it most likely won't. Just like doing magic outside of a safe place that is private, like your own home room, can be very off-putting and ineffectual. Yeah, it really depends on your personality. I've done some incredible off-the-cuff, instantaneous magic in the middle of a crisis and stopped us from being mugged. And other things, but those are like emergency. I have access to a lot of energy in an emergency setting, no matter where I am, and because I can just be me and do it, it's off-putting to the other people because I'm not performing as they expect.
Myself, I find it difficult to do something. I'm doing magic, except for Siofra. I don't want anybody watching me. I get self-conscious and uncomfortable, so I don't do it well in public places and things, though there are some magic techniques where you can use finger rituals inside your pocket, like a coat pocket or something. But
I've actually cast a circle around us sitting in the waiting room of the doctor's office, and just started doing the various pentagrams and just throwing them around without anybody seeing what I was doing.
And if you can do it, you don't need the tools, but tools are pretty helpful for not only for your own brain and stuff, but for actually collecting magic energy and storing them up for use.
So Tracy says, were you close with your parents? My question mark key doesn't work, sorry. No. My father was a alcoholic, sadist, into torture, and was not a nice person in any way, shape, or form. My mother, although she wasn't an active abuser like my father was, did not know how to protect us. And with Ian and his family, his mother was more the abuser kind of thing. So neither one of us come from a household where we were close to our parents or had a positive relationship with them. I mean, I have a relationship with my mother now, but it's very minimal. She's living with my youngest sister. I just talked to her the other morning. And, she's 93. So, but yeah, that's not the foundation for our stuff, for sure. I was just born different, and I was very confusing to my mother. She had to figure out how to deal with me and figure out how to accept me for the strange child that I was. So I stretched her quite a bit. Luo says, I dream about having a house far from humans. Garden, pond, greenhouse. I keep crocheting decorations for my future dream house because someday it will all be used. Yay! I like it. Sundrop says, I know eventually I will move out on my own and can do as I please. Well, I love being able to just have altars wherever I want them and, have my bedroom filled with my god and goddess statues and art that I like and the things that I've made, like my large peacock, which is hanging in my bedroom. Yeah, and it's nice, and I've always liked the idea of making things myself to have around. I've always been like that, crocheting blankets and whatnot. So we had an incident this week with the rabbit and the cat as an update for those who are following the trials and tribulations of Nibbler the rabbit and Bugsy the cat. Nibbler attacked the cat through the night, chased him, cornered him. The poor cat was crying and begging for help. I didn't realize what was happening. I thought that sounds weird. And my granddaughter actually woke up and separated them. So now Bugsy is sleeping with me so that he doesn't have to be in the other part of the house at night with the cat. So we're adapting.
With the rabbit.
With the rabbit, sorry, yeah. We're adapting to our new sleeping situation, so it's quite interesting. It's only been 2 nights so far. But I felt bad. I mean, I've never heard of a rabbit doing that to a cat before, and apparently he was really hyper when my granddaughter caught him, and his heart was just beating really super fast, and he wanted to get back down there and go after that cat again. It's like, wow, okay. Not very rabbit-like, but maybe people who know rabbits better than me know that. But yeah, it was very bizarre. I knew something was off, but I'm like, he's just being annoying. We were only gone for 2 nights. What's wrong with him? Crying like that. Life forms. They have their own thing. They do stuff. I bet you'll have fun when you move out on your own eventually, Sundrop. Because then you won't be worrying about what other people are going to think and whether this is okay or not. You'll be able to find your own kind of fit, what fits for you. Because there are, like Ian said, so many different ways of doing magic and being in a magical environment and so forth. Everybody got quiet all of a sudden.
Yes, they did.
People come, people go.
And people should come up with subjects. Sorry, I'm brain blank at the moment.
Eh. Lewis says, having my own house would be a magical experience. Yeah. Somebody asked us to do a thing on all of the different things that are in our temple, so we're thinking of doing a video introducing each altar and talking about what's on there and so forth, and give you an overview of the temple itself. Bobby says, just making myself a shungite bracelet. Okay, cool.
I assume that's probably a type of stone.
Yeah, shungite is a type of stone. Sundrop says, I think I would have a magical home. I bet you would. And you might even burn candles. Safely, I'm sure.
I'll tell you what, candle wax on a rug. I got a big blob on my rug at the moment. I should go and try and soak it out with an iron and iron a piece of paper over it or something.
Yeah, freeze it, chop it
however you do it.
or
Yeah.
iron it.
I'll tell you, it sure doesn't come out once you get a big blob of it in there. I had a candle that totally self-destructed and melted down into a giant puddle and ran onto the floor and soaked up a big puddle of wax.
Yeah, maybe we should get one of those little rug things you can put under it that's like a little linoleum something or whether.
Well,
Bobby says, looking for a spell to attract money, moolah, abundance, etc. So are we.
Yeah, one that works.
Yeah, so let us know.
So far I've tried a bunch of them, but they haven't seemed to have accomplished much. I've accomplished some minor things. I made a talisman once that would like make me find a few coins on the ground or something, but that's all I've been able to manage. Never have hit work. Keep working on that lottery, but haven't found anything to work yet.
Julia says, until you do achieve the physical home of your dreams, a nice alternative would be a place altar on the astral, which you can make as fantastical as you want. Yep. Doing your own astral temple is always a good idea. In fact, that's a standard practice, really, to do even if you have your own house. So an astral temple is a good step. We did a whole video on building your own astral temple, and it is fun. Sheila says, didn't have a chance to say hello. Glad to be here. There is candle wax remover liquid. So we'll have to look for that.
Okay.
Sundrop says, oh, I sure would burn candles. I've already got plans on how my setup will be. I'm just waiting.
Awesome.
Lewis says, I have a small poem written on the wall of the shower, relaxation spell. This week had to call plumber. He saw it and looked at me strangely. Oh, well. Yes, I'm pretty sure that one of my postwoman is a pagan because of the way she reacted to my yard. And she was just all smiles and waving at me and saying hello. And I just like, hi. Yeah, I got a good vibe from her. But we have quite a few different people that come and deliver our mail, so I never know who we're going to get. But yes.
It varies randomly-ish.
Yeah. Tracy says, where do you find your items? You usually have the blue pillars behind you, so unique. I made those. I used PVC pipe and paint. And I made them look like lapis because I wanted lapis columns, and who the heck could afford lapis columns? That's the Egyptian memory in me, because I remember several different lifetimes in Egypt, and yeah, I like their decorations and their stuff. So I make a lot of my own stuff, and some of the stuff I find and people give to me, and but I made the pillars, and then my friend Shay gave me the dragon braziers that go in it that fit. There's a 4-inch PVC pipe, and then we had to weight the bottom so that they wouldn't fall over. And Joy says, I heard today that the Sri Yanka symbol is supposed to attract prosperity and money. I'm going to try it. We'll let you know if it works. All right. Lil says he was like, your idea? I'm like, yes. I think he was surprised, but not completely turned off by the relaxation poem. I once, years ago, had an electrician, I think, come over to a house I lived in. And he was really having a hard time figuring out what was wrong with our thermostat and electricity or something. It was puzzling him. So he went home and he dreamt on it. And he came back with the solution, which I thought was awesome. That, he was seriously into using his dreams to, the things he figures that he was noticing but not consciously noticing, he could put together in his sleep, and then he came back with the solution to the problem because of that. So you just never know. People can surprise you. Bobby says, Shungite at times I feel is better protection than other black stones. Amazing stuff. And Bobby says, yep, been there, Egypt. Their music makes me joy all over. Ancestors, etc. Sundrop says, I have spells posted on my wall I forget to take down. I've got books and crystals and electronic candles in my room. My mom hasn't said anything yet. Well, I have a client who's a Catholic, and I go work on her at her house, And she has got crucifixes, Mary statues with little Jesuses, Jesus statues, candles, little altars all over her house. It's very pagan. Just specific to, her pantheon, but it's definitely very pagan oriented. And she's got little things everywhere. She's quite cute. Bobby says, well, Sundrop, if she it all, just say, oh, I'm just collecting those. Okay. I like having reminders of things sometimes on the wall when it's something important. Bobby says, lots and lots of candles make a home more homey. I'm glad they've come out with non-paraffin alternatives. Because that can be hard on your lungs. Besides which, we're trying to get away from using that.
That's the problem I have. Our temple is out kind of separate from the house, so for a lot of my regular meditations and things, I don't do them in the temple. I do them in a small room. But it's so small I can't burn incense or anything in there. It gets to my nose too much. And even a candle or our little lamp, I lit our little lamp for a while, and even that, I can only let it go for 15 minutes or so. I gotta turn it off.
Well, you don't want to be overwhelmed by the fumes.
No.
But they have soy and some other substances.
Before, when I was in a small area, I never found anything that worked for me, and I just kind of quit trying eventually. I just don't use it in general. Not for very long. I burn a candle or something for 10 or 15 minutes or something, but not that that's here nor there.
So Julia says, aren't they purty? With a big bright, you have to agree with me smile. Lots and lots of candles. Bobby says, Siofra, from experience, what are the strongest spirits out there? Depends on what you're needing. I've met some pretty intense and interesting god and goddess forms. The probably strongest spirit I've encountered was the dragon spirit that has the two heads, one head at either end. That was the most intense, powerful, and potentially dangerous spirit I think I've encountered. And I was happy that somehow I knew what to do and I could make it my ally and stay there and not move and not be afraid. Being fearless was the requirement to survive that experience and encounter. And I was actually thinking about that the other day, and I can sense what direction they're in. Like there's a few of them here and there that I can sense them sometimes, just like I can sense bear and deer when I'm driving. I can go through an area and go oh, there's a bear that lives here. I'm not sure exactly how far away from here that bear is, but this is some bear's territory. I think that the inhuman spirits are actually the strongest ones I've encountered as far as just a raw energy is concerned, and they require caution when you're encountering them, and they're not necessarily something that is easy to work with. It's not necessarily something you work with. So I don't know. Land guardians are pretty big, and I've had one local one here that I met that actually came into my house to warn me about a dangerous person who was in my house, which I didn't get the message until later and figured out why did that happen. They all have their different roles and so forth. The Garuda is a pretty strong spirit god form that works with us. And
that's true, yeah.
And I met Argus. That was sort of a spontaneous meeting with Argus, and that was pretty interesting. These are not. They're the stronger they are, the less likely it is that you're going to work with them on a casual basis. As far as that goes, but in an emergency, they would be there for sure to help. I have some good karma built up from the universe gives me jobs, puts them in my path. I pick them up, look at them, decide if I think I can do something about it, and if not, I put them back on the path to go to someone else who might be more capable of doing that. And that's how me and the universe work together. It's like this interactive series of things that just kind of come by, and inspirations and intuitions and things like that. So I just sort of go with that flow and work with things, and I'm not, I don't know exactly what to say about it all, but yeah, there's definitely some interesting beings out there. So, Sundrop says, I really love candles, but the magic may not come through too well without live flames. It's very comforting. Julia says, Sundrop, have you ever considered that electricity is just another form of fire? Winks.
Okay, I'd interject something right there real quick that Barden mentions that spirit beings, when you're trying to do, he mentions it specifically for trying to do an evocation, don't care so much for electric lights, so recommends for that you use lamps or candles or alcohol lamps or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to really depend. Yeah. Sundrop says, e-candles just aren't the same as real candles. Bobby says, I know what you mean, Siofra. I have dragon spiritual guides, and I like their power and wisdom. Sundrop says, yes, Julie, I've heard that, but real candles are recommended. Some workings require dripping wax and letting a real candle burn down. Joy says, how would you describe Garuda? Big. Okay, I got to go on a ride on his back one time, not long after he decided he wanted to take us literally under his wing and be a protector for us.
But maybe you should describe who he is, because...
So this is a small version of Garuda. Garuda is a Hindu deity who is the mount of Vishnu, and he has a whole story that goes with him. He hates snakes. He's got, this one's more in the human form. They've got his wings sort of stylized on the back. The one I have in my room has got the big wings, because he supposedly created the valleys and the mountains in India with his flight, because his feathers would come down and scoop the land down and then pull it up to create the mountains. And he's got a bird face. I just was attracted to him, and I wasn't sure why. He has fire claws and his beak that he uses to protect his followers, and sometimes he lets them ride on his back. And one night, I found myself suddenly clinging to some feathers and flying through the air, and looked up and saw all these other people who were on his wing doing that. And yeah, eagle is definitely one of the ways that they describe him, and there's a lot of countries that have the Garuda on their flag. The eagle with the snake in his claws is Garuda. And a lot of countries in the east have got that. Mexico's got that on their flag. We have versions of that on our coins and things, which I find fascinating. And definitely all the eagles are kind of like part of his tribe when it comes to that. Sundrop says, well, all I can do is start small until I can advance and learn. Yeah.
Yep.
Bobby says, did you ever work with Medusa, the woman with snakes for hair? I haven't worked with her directly, not at this point. Lula says, I'm going to go. Have a nice evening, everyone. Well, thank you, Lula, for being here. We'll see you next week, maybe, or whenever you pop in. So yeah, the Garuda protects our household from intruders. When we went through the witch wars on the coast, that's sort of when that came up. And I was like, I couldn't believe that other people were trying to like bind my power and stop me from being me. And I'm like, you got to have a good reason to do that, because the universe is not going to allow it. I've been working with the universe on my own for too long. There's no way the universe is going to go like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's take one of our assets off the table. Not happening. Grumpy Al says, have a great day, everyone.
Goodbye. I guess it is about that time, isn't it?
Well, we got about 5 minutes that we can go because
Okay.
we were a few minutes late when we got started. I go by the amount of time that's expired rather than the
Sure.
time on the clock. So I don't mind talking for a little bit yet.
Cool.
But yeah, he gets different sizes. He can be gigantic, like the size of a city, or small, depending on needs. So sometimes I can feel him like over our car when I call on him to protect us when we're traveling and stuff like that, and then he's not so big. I've had some people who have traveled here on the mental planes and have encountered him and told me about that, which I thought was interesting. Sage says, has a fae or any other being ever appeared in a dream? Well, yeah, I have them all the time in dreams. And in person, so they don't necessarily have to come to me in a dream. Joy says, why is he holding a snake? Because that's the Naga. Okay, I'll quickly tell you his origin story. He was not a god when this started, and the Naga, which were the snake deities, people of India, wanted to become gods themselves and become immortal. So they kidnapped Garuda's spouse and held her hostage and said that if he wanted to get her back unharmed, he needed to steal the immortality drink from Vishnu, because the gods were the ones who had that, and then give it to them, and then he would get his wife back. And he really liked his wife a lot and wanted her back, but he was very ethical, and he really didn't feel comfortable with the idea of stealing this elixir of immortality from Vishnu. So he went to Vishnu and told him what had happened and what kind of a bind he was in. So Vishnu gave him the immortality stuff and said, here's what you do. You can take this with my blessing and trade it for your wife. And once you have your wife, spill the cup on the ground, and they will never be able to become immortal. And so that's what he did. And then he, after that, did not like them because they kidnapped his wife. It's a good reason not to like somebody.
I think so.
So whenever he saw them, he killed them. That was kind of his thing. He didn't want to have them around, so.
Physically, practically speaking, there's some Garuda mantras and things for protection, especially from snakes and poisoning, as you can imagine.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think I have answered Joy's second part of the question, what does the snake represent? And it represents his ability to control them or stop them.
In a majority of cases of snakes, they usually represent wisdom. That's just in general, though.
So Sundrop says, so should I hold off working with spirits because I can't use real flames if they require real flames?
Not so much that they require real flames, but that some Abardans, they are less comfortable with electric lights, that's all. So, you can work with the spirits without any flames whatsoever, as far as that goes. It's just that electric lights make things more difficult. They don't really hinder things so much. They probably like put a fog in the way kind of thing from working with them and that kind of thing. So they're a little sensitive to it, but it's not I always try to have lights off when I do any vocation or if we do something like that, but candles and things, candles and things, but yeah, so no, the fact that if you can't do that, that doesn't imply that you shouldn't work with them, not at all.
And you can always work with them in the dark with no light at all.
That's true too.
All right, I guess now is the time for us to get going, so I guess we shall head on out. And don't snakes also represent the Kundalini? Yes, but that's a different kind of snake. And we'll get into that later. But yeah, so cool. So
all right.
See you guys next time, and keep your questions coming.
Blessed be, and thank you all for being here.
Yes, absolutely. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.